there, welcome to our Sewing with Patterns class. My name is Marissa and I'm the owner and instructor at Resewn. Today we're going to be covering everything you need to know about sewing with sewing patterns. And we're going to cover three main topics today. The first one is going to be the different kinds of sewing patterns and where you can find them. The second is going to cover sizing and taking your measurements. And the third is going to be about pattern markings and the general information about how to read through your pattern. So let's jump into it. Up first, there are two different types of patterns. We have commercial patterns. So these are going to be made by the Simplicity brand. So you might see Simplicity, McCall's, Berta, New Look, and I think the other one is Know Me, are the brands. These ones you can find at craft stores. I don't know if Michael's has them, but you can also order them on their website at simplicity.com. There's a really great variety of patterns. They have so many because they've been making them for so long. So one thing about commercial patterns that I kind of like to caution about is that they are not the most size inclusive. Usually the hip only goes up to about a 45, 50, maybe. So not the most size inclusive, but they do, like I said, have a large variety. They have men's patterns, kids patterns, bag patterns, dog patterns, so many things. So you can find those. And the other one is called independent patterns. So I have some examples here of some pattern companies. So these are people who have independently, outside of the Simplicity brand, created their own companies that make patterns. Usually they come from people who are home sewists and have wanted to make patterns for other people. I really love using independent patterns. I find that the styles fit more with what I'm looking for, and also the instructions are really good, and the sizing is usually pretty inclusive. A lot of companies have really been working on expanding their sizing. Some of them go up to 63-inch hips, which is much more size inclusive than, of course, the 50-inch hip over here. So if you're looking for patterns, there are many places you can find them. If you're looking for the commercial ones, like I said, you can go to simplicity.com. If you're looking for some of the independent companies, I will put in the description some of my favorite companies that I like to use. But I also like to shout out the app Threadloop. It is a web-based app that you can use to search for a variety of patterns. You can search by pattern type, but like if you want to make a pair of pants, you can search by pant type. You can do trousers, skinny jeans, whatever kind of pants you want to make, you can find those on there. It also allows you to look by difficulty level. You can search by specific companies. It's super awesome. It's kind of like Ravelry, but for sewing patterns. Big fan. So I do highly recommend checking out those. But those are going to be the first main differences between the pattern types. Okay. If you are using a commercial pattern, it's going to come in this envelope. I put mine in these big envelopes because it's kind of hard to get all of this stuff back inside here after you get things cut out. So it comes with the directions that you will need. It has pictures. It also will have in it fabric layouts and all of those helpful tools, which we'll talk about a little bit at the end when we go over the pattern markings. And then it has tissue paper that you would use to cut out your size, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But you will use these then to cut out your pieces. So they're a little bit more fragile, I would say, than some of your other patterns, but you may see why I don't put them all back in that envelope. So that's what you're going to find in here. If you're using an independent pattern, when you get the pattern, they will give you different file types. So you can choose to print it as a PDF, which will give you a bunch of pages of paper that you're going to tile together, and they will come together to make one large sheet of paper that has all of your patterns. Or you can have them printed as an AO file, and that's going to print it all in one big piece for you, so you don't have to do all of the, taping and gluing of all of these pages together to get this. You can just have that printed just like that for you. Adam at Perlo Textiles does do pattern printing, so you can send him your file and he will print it for you at a very affordable price and keep you from having to print all of those and cut and tape everything. It gets to be kind of tedious after a while, but if you want to print things right now and don't want to have to go to the store and wait and pick up the pattern, you can always just print them at home. If they're small patterns too, I think it's easier to print them at home if you only have a few pages. So PDF patterns, again, you can print at home and piece together. You can also do large format printing, or you can also use, some pattern companies now are coming out with projector files. So you can put them into your projector programming and project it directly onto your fabric and then cut it straight out without having to deal with paper at all. I have never done that before, but there's a lot of resources on the Projectors for Sewing group on Facebook if you were interested in that. So that is going to cover the pattern types. So you have, again, commercial and independent. You have PDF patterns that you can print at home, large file prints that you can have printed at Perlo Textile, or again, the projector file if you are interested in that route. So now that we know the differences in the types of patterns and where we can find them, we're gonna now dive into how to take our measurements and how to choose our size. Let's go. For this, you will need a measuring tape. So now that I have my measuring tape, we are going to take 3 basic measurements that you will use for the vast majority of patterns that you are going to be making. And that's going to be your bust, your waist, and your hip measurement. So, and I also think that there are some patterns, especially for women, that will call for an upper bust measurement, and I will show you how to take that after we take our bust measurement. The first measurement we're going to take is going to be the bust measurement. It is sometimes referred to as the chest measurement if it is a gender neutral pattern. And to take that measurement, you're going to want to take the measurement around the widest part of your chest, wherever that falls for you. If you are making something that is a little bit more fitted, it might be worthwhile to wear the bra that you are planning on wearing with the garment. If you're not planning on wearing one, I would take the measurements without one, because we all know that that will change kind of where things sit. So it's going to go across the widest part of our chest. We don't want to be pulling really tight, because then when we make the clothes, if we choose our size, they're going to feel like that on your body. So you want it to be snug but not tight. Helpful to write these down. The next one you're going to take is going to be your waist measurement. This is probably going to be a little bit higher than you think it will be. It's going to be where your natural waist is. So to find that, if you bend to the side, where your body crease is right here, that's where your natural waist is at, and that's where we want to be taking that measurement. So I'm gonna find the crease. You can put your measuring tape there, and you're gonna bring it around again. We don't want it to be super, super snug. I do recommend taking these measurements if you're wearing maybe a tighter fitting shirt, or you can also measure it under your clothes, just so that you get a true measurement and not, the measurement with your clothes on top of it. Okay, so you're gonna find that. The next one we're going to take is going to be our hip measurement, and that's going to go across the widest part of our bottom here. Take that, same thing, around, and you wanna pull it so that it's snug but not constricting. And then you're gonna mark those down. Oh, the last one I said we were going to take was our upper bust. So that's going to be right under the armpits above your chest. And this one will help if you're doing a tightly fitted garment. It just kind of helps to make sure that you're picking the correct bust size, because some patterns will have a B bust size and a CD cup size. And so you can choose, and this will help you determine that measurement. So again, not super tight, but just a little bit snug. And then you can check that and mark those down. Now that we have our measurements, we're going to figure out how we're going to take those and apply them to a size chart. Let's do that next. So now that we've picked our measurement size, we're going to look at a sizing chart. I'm going to put a chart up here on the screen so that you can look at what I'm looking at while I'm explaining to you. So we're going to talk about commercial patterns first. If you have a commercial pattern, on the back of the envelope, all the information that you need is going to be there. It'll tell you what fabric types are good for this garment. It'll tell you what notions you need. Notions are going to be things like buttons, zippers, elastic, other things other than fabric and thread. Thread is a notion, but they usually will not list that on here. Though, other than those things that you're going to need to make the garment. So if you're making a button-down shirt, it will list how many buttons you need on the pattern. Below that, it will tell you the body measurements. You want to start by basing your size that you're choosing on your body measurements. So I like to personally just circle which size I'm on so that I can see if I'm across multiple sizes. I can start to think about how I'm going to choose my size. So you can circle where you're at. If you're in between, you can kind of circle in between. And then I also like to mention the size that you choose is not the size that you wear in ready-to-wear clothes that you buy at the store. If you are a size 10 in jeans at the store and you say, oh, I'm going to make a size 10, this will not fit you, okay? Generally, I wear a size between a size 2 and a 4, and I usually make patterns that are a size 10 or 12, okay? So please make sure that you are using your body measurements to choose your size. Below that, it's going to talk about the fabric requirements, and then there should be a spot down here at the very bottom. It says finished garment measurements. So this is going to tell you how much ease is going to be in the garment when you are finished making it. So like how much extra space do you have, right? So like this garment has quite a bit of ease because there's a lot of extra space on both sides of the shirt. So it will tell you how much ease you will have, so then you can decide if you're in between sizes. If you want it to be a little tighter fitting, you can choose the lower size. If you want it to be a little bit looser fitting, maybe you want to go for the larger size. You may also need to grade your patterns if it's a wide range. A lot of patterns will have directions for how to do that, but you will be essentially bringing the lines together on the pattern paper, which I will show you when we get the pattern out here in just a little bit. So you're going to look at the body measurements first. If you're in between sizes and you're not quite sure, you can then go down and look at those finished measurements to see what would make the most sense. So independent patterns are going to have a different sizing chart based on what company it is. So it's important to make sure that you are reading the sizing charts. I'm going to put a few of them up on the screen here so that you can get an idea of what they look like in comparison to the commercial pattern. And I will say indie patterns, I think, do a better job of explaining all of the steps of the process and how to grade your patterns, how to choose a size. All of that is usually going to be in the instruction booklet. Another thing that's important to note with patterns is that they are drafted for a specific height. Most of the commercial patterns are drafted for people who are 5'6". So if you are taller or shorter than 5'6", you may have to do some modifying. I am 5'2", so I commonly have to shorten my patterns a little bit so that they fit the way that I like them to. Independent companies are drafted for different heights, just like they are with different sizing ranges, because it is an independent person who is making these. And they usually draft it off of something that is a block that is close to their body, since they are the ones that are making the patterns. So you need to check that. There's one company that I like to use that has patterns drafted for someone who is 5'2". As someone who is 5'2", that is really nice so that I don't have to alter them quite as much. So that's an important step to look at as well when we get into cutting out the pattern and our fabric. If you're having a hard time choosing a size, feel free to shoot me a message and I'd be happy to talk you through which size would be the best based on your measurements and the fit that you are looking for. Now we're going to go ahead and talk about pattern markings and following a pattern. When you come take a class with us, we will walk you through every step of the pattern as we go. But if you're working on something on your own, or if you're just looking at what pieces to cut out, let's go over that first. So when you see your pattern, it's going to come printed like this as a large scale. It has all of the sizes on it so that you can either grade if you need to, and you also just have all of the options ready for you there. Some companies are really nice, like this one is, I believe, So Liberated is the name of the company, and they print theirs in color so that every line is a different size and a different color so that you can easily see which size you need to cut. Some pattern companies use only black and white, and they will have the different dashed lines for each size. So you have to make sure you're looking at the correct dashed line. Sometimes it's helpful to highlight it with a highlighter or a marker so that you can follow it, especially when you get to places like this where it's super overlapping. It can be kind of hard to see sometimes, so it's important to make that visible for you. Also, after you have figured out which size line is yours, you're going to see some other markings on here that are important for cutting our fabric and for later on in the process when we're matching things up. Most patterns will have a key, so I will put that up here on the screen so you can see it easier, but there's a key, and it's going to talk about several different markings that are important. So the first one I want to talk about is called the grain line. and that's going to be shown with a double-sided arrow. So this right here, you will also say grain line on it, and that's going to tell you how to line up your fabric. That we will talk about more when we go into class and cut our fabric together. But your grain line is always going to run parallel to your selvage edge of your fabric. So when you're cutting your when you have fabric, so here's, I'm gonna use this one for an example. So when you have fabric, it's got what's called the selvage edge, and that is the side from the factory when it is woven. That is the edge. So in this pattern, it's very easy to see. It is this white edge here. That is the selvage edge. So that means when I'm cutting my pattern, I'm going to lay my pattern piece that I've cut out on my fabric so that that arrow is going to be going in the same parallel direction as my selvage edge. The reason you want to do that is because fabric has stretch in different directions. So like this fabric has a very, very minimal amount of stretch in this direction, but this direction, there's really not any stretch. So if I cut it the wrong way, now my pattern piece is going to be like pulling in a strange way or maybe sagging down. So we want to make sure we're really paying attention to that when we cut our fabric. So again, that's the grain line. Also, we're going to see some things that they look different on different patterns, but here on this pattern, they are just a little notched line here, like a little short little line that sticks into the pattern. Those are called notches. When you're cutting out the pattern on paper, it doesn't really matter, but you're going to want to make sure we cut those out when we are cutting the fabric, because you're going to use those later on in the pattern to match up things. So you might have to match up a sleeve, and the pattern will say match up at the notches, and if you forget to cut those, now you're trying to match up these pieces blind. So those are going to be really important when we go to match up or we go to cut our fabric. You might also see some, like this one has dots on it. The dots are also a marking for us to match up pockets or things that are going to be laid on top usually. So we'll mark those with chalk, which I will show you how to do when we are cutting our fabric. You may also find some other things listed on here. It will tell you the name of the pattern piece. It will tell you how many you need to cut and what you need to cut it out of. So for example, this one says cut 2 from main fabric. So whatever your main fabric is, you would cut 2 of them. Sometimes it will say cut 2 out of your fabric and cut 1 out of interfacing, or cut 2 lining pieces and 2 outside pieces. All of that information is going to be listed on the actual piece of paper. They will also list to you what your seam allowance is going to be, so that's just kind of for you in the future to know. It also mentions that in the pattern directions, but it also says it on the pattern piece. So that tells you how far away from the edge you're going to be sewing. One of the other pattern markings I think is really important is the shorten and lengthen lines. So again, if you are either taller or shorter than whatever the pattern is drafted for, those are going to be the places where you can cut the pattern and either take out some of the length or add more length onto it. It's important to do that before you cut your fabric, of course, so that you can cut your fabric out in the size that you want and don't have to have any weird seams or anything. Sometimes they will have those distributed in multiple places, so you can distribute. Sometimes they have it up here in the crotch curve and in the leg, so then you can distribute, the inches that you need to add in the top and the bottom. Now let's chat really quick about reading through a pattern. So this is an independent pattern, and I like to print mine out. Some people will just use them digitally, but I like a hard copy. And inside of that pattern, you're going to find a lot of information. So again, we have our sizing charts, our finished measurement charts, and our fabric requirement charts. So once you've picked your size, you'll go to your fabric requirements chart and you will look and see for the view that you're making and the size you're making, it will tell you how much fabric you need. Usually it will give you multiple options of fabric width, like how wide your fabric is. Most apparel fabric is going to be between 55 and 60 inches wide. And then if you think of things like quilting cotton, or crafting fabrics, that's usually going to be about 42 to 45 inches wide. And the pattern will tell you if you're using 45-inch wide fabric or 60-inch wide fabric, how much you will need of those, depending on. the sizing. It will also have information about printing your patterns. So if you're printing them at home, it'll have a tiling view so you can see how the pieces fit together. And then it also talks to you about how to use layers if they have options for that. Sometimes companies will put the sizes in layers so that you can select just the sizes that you want when you print those. So all of that information will be in the printing instructions. It will also give you a look at the pattern pieces, and it will tell you what the numbers are and what they all are called. And so you can it's like a pattern inventory, so you know which pieces that you'll need for the pattern you're making. A lot of the independent patterns will also have a glossary with important words. So if there's ever something when you're reading, I don't know what that means, check out the glossary. It has a lot of common phrases that sewists know, but if you're just starting out, you may need a little bit of help with those. This one also gives you some tips on sewing with heavy fabric, talks about the thread that you might use. So again, independent companies do a really great job of giving you everything that you need all in one place. This one has some recommended tools, some things to think about before you start sewing, some like little tips and tricks. So those are things to check out as well. Then you're going to get into the cutting layouts. Cutting layouts are going to show you how you can set up your fabric and lay out your pattern pieces to cut them out. We will go over this part together in class so that you can feel confident that you're cutting your fabric out correctly. But if you want to take a look at that, you can look in the directions of the pattern that I sent out to you and see kind of what that would look like, and then compare that to what we do in class. This one has a lot of pages of that. And then after all of that, you get into the directions. I like to use independent company patterns because I think that they have better instructions that are a little bit more clear. The pictures are usually a little bit more clear and easy to follow, but that's just personal preference. So that's everything you're going to find in here. All of that information is also in the directions for the commercial patterns as well. So like this page has that pattern inventory, so you know what pieces you need. It has a guide for what all of the markings mean. So like the grain line, the length and shorten line, all of those are listed here. You also have some information about lengthening and shortening. It gives you information about your cutting layout again, so that you know how to lay out your fabric. All of those things are still on here as well. I just find that it's a little bit harder to follow. So they might be a little tricky if you are starting out with a commercial pattern. So now that we've gone over all of that, I know that was kind of a lot of information that came at you pretty quick. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. You can put a comment in the bottom of this video. You can shoot me a DM on Instagram, Facebook. You can send me an email, whatever works best for you. I try to make sure I check all of those very frequently so that I can get back to you. If you were signing up to take a class with us, it's important that you come to the very first class with your pattern, your paper pattern cut out, so that we can get started sewing right away. Cutting out the pattern does take a little bit of time, and I think it's better to spend our time focusing on the sewing and not just the cutting. We will cut our fabric together, so don't cut that yet. Just make sure you pre-wash it so that you don't have the issue of shrinkage. If you don't pre-wash it, you make your garment, throw it in the washer and dryer, and now it's too small. So please pre-wash your fabric. We'll cut together, but you will have your pattern cut already so that we can just lay it, cut it, and go. So thank you for watching, and I'm really excited to get sewing with you guys. Thanks!